growing fast, looking to challenge the current world order and the dominance of Western powers.
A great deal so far in the discussions on Ukraine. We had the announcement from President Biden yesterday.
We've never considered ourselves to be a country outside of Europe, but we've not been admitted to the European Union after 54 years. Thus, a new period will begin now.
İhtiyaç duymadığımızı söylemedik. Türkiye'nin Avrupa Birliği'ne ihtiyacı var, Avrupa Birliği'nde Türkiye'ye ihtiyacı var. Ama Avrupa Birliği'nin sık sık Türkiye'ye olan ihtiyacını unuttuğunu görüyoruz.
The BRICS session held in Russia this week was a power projection by the upcoming multipolar world. It's the first meeting of the expanded group of 10, which now includes Iran, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Ethiopia and Egypt as members of BRICS. The Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan attended this meeting, underscoring Turkey's interest in exploring cooperation opportunities with the BRICS countries. And there are strong rumors emanating from Istanbul that Turkey, tired of being treated as a second-rate country by its Western allies, is seriously considering joining BRICS. President Erdogan had participated in the 10th BRICS summit in Johannesburg in 2018. But despite an offer at the time to join in the next round of BRICS expansion, he did not take it up. But now circumstances and objectives both for BRICS and Turkey are very different. BRICS is an amalgam of countries from the world's largest authoritarian government, China, to the world's largest democracy, India. It contains Western pariah states, Russia and Iran, as well as US Middle Eastern allies, Saudi Arabia, UAE and Egypt. It is increasingly seen as an anti-Western alliance challenging the status quo, a growing powerful alternative power structure to those created post-1945 by Western countries to perpetuate their own power. When Turkey joins, it would be the first NATO country to jump into this group. Turkey finally tired of what many in the country perceive as a racist, Islamophobic and a non-serious attitude shown by the Europeans to its request of EU membership, it has finally come to the realization that it needs to move on from what by this stage is a decades-old aim to join Europe. This is a big message to Europe and the West. It's joining at a time when the West is at war with two of the major countries in BRICS, with Russia through Ukraine and an economic war with China. Even South Africa is not in their good books after its stance on Israel and for taking it to the ICJ for the genocide of Palestinians. Turkey signed its association agreement with the European Community in 1963 and requested full membership in 1987. The European Community, or the EC, which was the precursor to the European Union, only had 12 member states at the time. What's interesting is that Spain and Portugal had just joined the year before in 1986, and these countries had signed their association agreements with the EC in 1970 and 1972, a lot later than Turkey. When they officially joined the EC, they had very bad economic situations, with massive unemployment, high inflation and low growth rates, and had recently emerged from dictatorship governments. Nothing made them especially different from the Turks, except for one major difference: their religion. They were Muslims. At the Helsinki summit in 1999, Turkey was officially recognized as a candidate country for the EU membership. Talks were carried out between Turkey and the EU, but with no significant breakthrough for Turkey. Making things worse, in 2018, the European Parliament voted to suspend Turkey's accession talks due to their concerns over human rights and the rule of law issues. There is a sense of betrayal from Europe felt in Turkey, and after 35 plus years of waiting, they know they are never going to get accepted into this elitist Christian club, and are looking towards BRICS, in the words of the Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan during his recent visit to China, where he described BRICS to offer a good alternative to the European Union. At this point, Turkey probably has more to gain from joining BRICS, which contains the world's second and third largest economies anyway. Recently, the Russian spokesperson revealed that over 40 countries have lined up to join BRICS, including Thailand, a stalwart US ally up to now in Southeast Asia. So what does NATO member Turkey bring to the BRICS table and vice versa? Does BRICS threaten Western hegemony? How are Western countries cleverly using the prisoner's dilemma strategy to keep BRICS in check? My aim is to reach 30,000 subscribers by the end of June, and each one of you can really help me to achieve this goal. Please subscribe, like and share the video if you enjoy the content. It will help me to bring a variety of new topics to you to discuss the different issues. Do share with me your comments and suggestions on other areas you are interested in. BRICS was an acronym created in 2001 by the Goldman Sachs, the investment bank, in a report titled Building Better Global Economic BRICS. BRICS refers to Brazil, Russia, India and China, which were identified as emerging economies with significant growth potential and an increasing influence on the global stage. Officially, though, the group was only set up in 2009 with its first meeting in Russia. This was after the 2008 financial crisis, which exposed the vulnerabilities in the global financial system, and emerging economies like Brazil, Russia, India and China recognized the importance of having their own platform to coordinate their responses to the global economic challenges that existed and to assert their own collective interests. South Africa was added to the group in 2010, which expanded it to become BRICS, to better represent the African continent and enhance the group's geopolitical weight as well. The group is expected to dominate the global economy in the coming decades even more, and is seen as an alternative to the G7, which is led primarily by the Western nations. So BRICS represents a significant shift in global power dynamics. If Turkey's bid is successful, it would become the first NATO ally to join the bloc. The creation of an alternative power bloc threatening the domination of the Western power as set up in 1945 sends shivers down the backs of G7 countries like the United States, UK and Canada, although the latter two countries are now irrelevant to the world and retain their power to the extent that they have any by playing second fiddle to the United States. The BRICS countries collectively represent close to 42% of the world's population and 29% of global GDP, as compared to the G7's 43% of GDP. On a PPP level, they're already bigger than the G7 at 36% versus 30%. Their economic growth and increasing share of global trade challenges the dominance of Western economies. For instance, BRICS nations are rapidly becoming major players in the manufacturing, technology and resource extraction sectors, which can shift economic power away from the traditionally dominant Western economies. Despite Turkey's current economic issues, it has a GDP of over $1 trillion in 2023, so it would be a significant addition to the BRICS Plus club now. While the majority of Turkey's trade is with Europe, joining BRICS offers it an opportunity to expand and deepen new trade relationships. Looking in more detail at why BRICS threatens Western hegemony and why Turkey leaving the Western camp is a disaster, we can see that BRICS countries represent a multipolar world order, which stands in contrast to the unipolar dominance of the United States and its Western allies. They are perpetuating this power through their dominance of international institutions like the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the World Bank, in which the Global South are not given their rightful voting share. So China, for example, only has a 6% of the voting shares of the IMF, despite having 18% of the global GDP. The leadership of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank is chosen through what can best be described as a gentleman's agreement, in which the IMF is always headed by a European and the World Bank is headed by an American. Now, this is despite the fact in 2009, during the G20 summit, the Western countries had promised that the future leaders of the IMF and the World Bank would be chosen on the basis of merit and not geographical territory. BRICS is seen as a platform challenging American power, and currently it's also giving legitimacy to Russia, demonstrating it has allies in the world against Western attempts to isolate it due to the Ukrainian war. In the current BRICS session, China has also urged BRICS countries to take a stance against the new Cold War, as it describes it. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov pointed out in his opening remarks during the recent session of foreign ministers from the expanded BRICS that BRICS are becoming increasingly important in a changing world. BRICS expansion confirms the process of forming a multipolar world order, he says, noting that there's a growing influence of South and East Asian countries in the global decision-making. The Russian foreign minister criticized Western attempts to maintain dominance and slow multipolarization. Economic weapons, as he put it, like sanctions and financial pressure, are being used by Western nations to influence sovereign decisions. For the BRICS countries, adding Turkey to its ranks strengthens them strategically. Although it is only a middle-income country, it punches well above its weight in the region. Given its strategic location, which straddles the West and the East, its historical location in the Middle East, and its importance as a leader in the Muslim world, as well as being a NATO ally for the United States. Turkey's interest in potentially joining BRICS aligns with its recent broader foreign policy strategy of diversifying its international alliances and reducing its dependency on Western-led systems. Being an important member of BRICS would raise Turkey's own standing in many global economic and political forums. The BRICS bloc often works together on strategic issues which can counterbalance Western military and political alliances, such as NATO. For instance, Russia and China have been strengthening their military and political ties, which poses a challenge to Western strategic interests in regions like Eastern Europe and Asia Pacific. Turkey can play an essential role in this. Turkey has been a member of NATO since 1952 and contributes significantly to NATO with its substantial military presence. It has approximately 355,000 active military personnel, making it the second largest military force within NATO after the United States. It hosts NATO bases, and its military capabilities are essential for NATO's collective defense and rapid deployment capabilities. Turkey's strategic location at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and the Middle East makes it a critical ally in terms of regional security and strategic access. It offers the same strategic advantages for the BRICS nations as well. The US-Turkish relationship, which was built on a shared security interest during the Cold War, the first Cold War, those interests have diverged considerably in the 3 decades since the collapse of the Soviet Union empire. Turkey now views economic relations with Russia as essential, while the United States and much of the Western world are committed to Moscow's military defeat in Ukraine. The BRICS nations have started slowly to take steps to create an alternative financial institutions and mechanisms, such as the New Development Bank and the contingent reserve arrangements. This will help them to reduce their dependence on Western-dominated financial systems, including the hegemony of the institutions like the IMF and the World Bank, as well as the dominance of the United States dollar in global trade. However, talks of de-dollarization is the fastest way to get yourself taken out of power. Ask, had they been alive, Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi. In 2000, Saddam Hussein announced that Iraq would switch its oil sales from dollars to euros. This decision was seen as a threat to the dollar's supremacy in the oil market. The United States invasion of Iraq in 2003, while publicly justified by concerns over the weapons of mass destruction and the promotion of democracy, is often cited. We know that it had economic motives linked to securing oil reserves and maintaining the dollar's dominance in the global oil transactions market. Muammar Gaddafi, the former leader of Libya, obviously did not learn from Saddam Hussein's example, and he proposed the creation of a gold-backed currency, the gold dinar, to be used for oil transactions in Africa. Likewise, this initiative is believed to have played an important part in contributing to the international intervention in Libya in 2011, leading to Gaddafi's ouster and the subsequent civil war in the country. However, despite this, many of the BRICS countries are increasingly trading with each other using their own respective currencies. Recently, the Russian President Vladimir Putin said that over 80% of the trade between Russia and China is settled in either the Russian ruble or the Chinese yuan. Similarly, much of Russia's trade with India is being done in the rupee. The countries have discussed setting up a new currency to support trade with each other, to reduce their reliance on the United States dollar, and to enhance their economic independence. This is particularly seen as being important after the way sanctions were placed on Russia, international reserves held in Western countries were frozen, and it was kicked out of the SWIFT system. China probably thinks the time is not too far away when the same could happen to the country, and is keen on using the BRICS platform to promote the internationalization of the yuan, as well as being on board with the idea of setting up a BRICS trading currency. But the likelihood of setting up a currency probably some time away before being adopted. The New Development Bank is also an important initiative as it gives the BRICS economies access to infrastructural finance for projects which would be extremely helpful for countries like Turkey to access. So far, it has approved around 96 projects and total of financing of around $33 billion, which, to be honest, in the scale of projects that are funded by the World Bank is not very much. Several BRICS countries are major exporters of natural resources, including energy and agricultural products. The addition of Saudi Arabia, Iran, and UAE into the club brings even more resource-rich members. And while it's probably not going to happen overnight, there is the potential that control over key resources can influence global markets and impact the economies of resource-dependent nations such as the Western nations. Russia supplied around 45% of the EU's natural gas imports, and this became a huge issue for Europeans in 2022 when sanctions were imposed on Russia and they couldn't buy Russian energy after the Ukrainian war. Prices shot up for domestic consumers, which created an outcry in these nations that were hit at the time. Countries like China and India are also rapidly advancing in technology and innovation. China in particular has made significant strides in areas such as artificial intelligence, 5G technology, green energy, electric vehicles. This technological competition is not only undermining Western technological supremacy and affecting global standards and markets, but also creates fears of vulnerability if the country is not seen to be an ally. Now, this applies more to China currently than India, which is not yet perceived to be a threat, probably because it's further away from being an actual competitor to the West. To keep a check on BRICS, Western powers have smartly played to keep members in a game of what is called a prisoner's dilemma. Now, this is an important strategic concept in game theory, taught in economics, international relations, and many other subjects as well. It illustrates why two rational countries, in this case, might not cooperate, even though it is in their best interest to do so. So players are used to play off each other, in this case using BRICS members against each other by exploiting the incentives for individual countries to prioritize their national interests over collective cooperation. So instead of India and China, the world's second and third largest economic countries, to work together to create an Asian century, get them to engage in a fight for power or resources in their region by exploiting distrust or competition to drive a wedge between them. However, it does not help that China has helped them by waging a mini war on the Galwan Valley border with India. Another way to play them off against each other is by highlighting how national interests might be better served through individual deals rather than collective agreements. The losing war in Ukraine, even if it's not acknowledged by the West, is making it increasingly clear that the United States is no longer the sole military hegemonic power. Along with the rise of the economic prowess of China and India, it paves the way for countries like Turkey to come out of its decades-built safe zone of the Western orbit. And Turkey, like many other states, Saudi Arabia, Iran and the UAE, seem to understand that they will find themselves nowhere if they continue to play only in one sphere. In the larger spectrum of the third world, BRICS is attempting to become a choice, if not a replacement, of the United States-led Western order. Thank you for giving me your time and reaching this far. I hope you will subscribe and like and share the video, and do suggest other topics you are interested in being covered.